Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to part 2 of coloring a flower vase with Derwent Inktense. My name is Christine Aldridge, and I am your host today. This project, we started on part 1 of this video, and I thought that we would go ahead and continue on with it, but in what can only be considered an update to the very tail end of the video earlier, the part 1 video, I have actually, oh no, because I couldn't help myself, I've actually started my diamond painting project. As you can see, I couldn't decide what end I wanted to start from. I did find out that it is much easier for me to work because at a certain point you end up having to lay your hand on your drills if you work from the bottom up, and that hurts your fingers. So then I decided to try it working from the bottom down, or from the top down. So that's what's going on here, because then you can just peel it back as you go, and so that works slightly better, but it's a little longer of a reach, so that means that part of it has to be in your lap. And I've already flipped my tray twice and sent drills all over my desk. This is just really fun. Diamond painting. I highly recommend it if you need a good laugh and you're willing to laugh at yourself. Anyway, and I limited myself to 1 hour, so I did 2 one-hour sections as a reward to my little self for doing other things that needed doing. I don't know about you, but that's how I work best. I work best on the incentive and reward system. I make little deals with myself. If I spend an hour cleaning in the kitchen, then I can do an hour of something that I would like. If I spend an hour working on my drawings, then I can spend 10 minutes doing something that I like, because, you know, one is work and the other is play. All right, so one of the things I did think that I would let you know is that when we left this, I think I had used the burnt orange in the ends here. I did add just a little bit of the thistle to these dark areas here in the tiger lily. Just a tiny bit, which helped to pull the color scheme together, and I think gives a really, really nice effect. Let me switch to the screen that actually has the picture that we are emulating, not necessarily copying exactly, but certainly trying to emulate. And you can see that Eva did the same thing with the interior of the tiger lily, although hers has a beautiful glow effect, and I think that is because she did it with pencils. And I'm going to try and achieve that by darkening up the gold, the golden yellow, toward the center and toward the ends. But we will get to that when we can get to it right now. How about we get to it right now? I'm going to go for a slightly more golden yellow, and that is actually the color golden yellow, which, if we look at our swatch book, is this one. So it is just sort of a step richer than our Sicilian. And of course, I might be able to achieve, well, actually, let's try this first. Let's try just going a little bit more golden to the interiors. And see if we can't just get our center a little more glowing. That doesn't really show up very well. See if it shows up better if we zoom. Pull it down just a tad. There we go. And focus looks pretty good. Oh. There we go. Perfection. Okay. So let's try it on just this one and see if that helps. Brushing off that extra pigment. And see, the color, the golden yellow is much darker, and this is generally true of any kind of ink-based products. They're much darker once they're on the page. And what I'm trying to do here is just restore that sort of curl effect, so that as the light is hitting it, this is the closest to the light right there at the top of it. So I think that that will work. Let's try it a second time on this one. An experiment repeated is a successful experiment. So how is everybody today? I hope you enjoyed part 1. And I hope that everybody had a wonderful Halloween, whatever it is that you were doing, whether you were just at home passing out candy or with the lights turned down pretending you weren't at home like I was. Actually, this year I didn't actually pretend that I wasn't home. I just didn't turn on the front porch light. And our neighborhood, which used to be just chock full of children, of course, we have all the same owners and all the kids are grown up, and the grandkids don't live in the neighborhood, so wherever they were all trick-or-treating in their own neighborhoods or perhaps at parties or other gatherings. They just weren't here, and so we've seen a really steady decline in the number of children that would show up for Halloween. So, okay, yes, experiment repeated, and it worked. It's a very subtle change, but it all the layering of colors adds richness and depth to a coloring project. Now, so you know, I don't always do this advanced tutorial type thing or, project. I have been known to just sit and color with markers, and we'll just do a little embellishing. I'll be doing much more videos like that as well. I did put one up last week, and it was fairly popular. So, and I can tell that by how many times it's viewed. I am still trying to determine what what works best for the types of videos that you guys would like. And so if you have suggestions of things that you would like to see, or particular mediums you might like me to use, effects, projects that you might like me to work on, please do make note of that in the comments below, and I'll see what I can do to accommodate you. In addition to, of course, showing you my art, I would like to, spend time with you and color the way you want to. I am adding just a little bit of the thistle pink down here in the deepest parts of this underleaf where it comes out, just to add a bit more contrast. You hear such wonderful artists as Dee Dee. I always seem to go back to Dee Dee. We call her Yoda, and there's a good reason. And she really does say it is all about the contrasts. So I'm going to brush that back because I don't want it to actually be out in the main part of it. I just want to get it a little bit wet so that it becomes permanent. And that it is deep in the deep in the shadow. Now you can, of course, also come back in and shadow with gray. And we may end up doing that before it's over. Or you can do, probably a better solution is to do a gray first and then do your color over it. That way you don't lose the darkness of the gray, but you get a chance to color it over, which if you look in, if you look closely at the way that shadows are, they do sort of take on the hue of the color they're meant to shadow. Okay, so we'll just add a little more of the golden. And note I'm really not coming very far up at all. Just a little. I'll tell you, somebody who is a master at this type of shadowing and shading is Karen at Zucchini Kitty, which is a channel that I just love. She has recently become enamored of her Neocolor 2s and is doing some absolutely fabulous work. She does a lot with distress inks and is just so inspiring, but she's a really talented colorist. And I also watched the catch-up videos that Sammy and Claire both did on their trip for the Jasmine Beckett Griffith event in Bath with or with Creative Heaven magazine. And they had a guest artist in who did an advanced coloring tutorial on skin and hair and all of that. It was Black Widow provided pencils to all of the participants. It was very cool. I love the idea of that kind of an event, and it was really well attended. I was a little surprised to learn that it was only a half-day event. I thought surely it was a whole weekend event, but or at least a full day, but it was only a half day. And I think that to a person, everybody who attended said, we would like it to have been a whole day. So that's good. Maybe they'll take that on board and do that next year. Okay, looking good. And just like that, we've added a little more zhuzh to our flower. And we can do the same thing with our flower down here. Up to now, it has only got, actually that's the mid vermilion. Let's see. What do I want? I want the thistle. So I'm going to add just a little bit of the thistle in the deepest areas. So we're going to give it a little bit of a contrast there. And the reason why I turn the page is because I do better guiding the pencil, if I'm going to do stroking like this, on the downstroke. It's just easier for me to control the pencil when I do it on the downstroke. It may be different for you. Just going to come up just a little bit, kind of emphasize the idea that these are curved. Add just a tiny bit down in the deepest parts, and just keep layering the color until you're really happy with it. I'm almost going for a dry brush effect here as I just sort of blend those colors in. Let's see. Not much has happened since I posted part 1 and started part 2, except for continuing to work on a new drawing for my new book, which hopefully, fingers crossed, will be coming out mid-November in time for Christmas. And trying to figure out what to color for the stream on Sunday. So if you're watching this video and it is before Sunday, I will be doing a live stream at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I do it every week, every Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is 7 p.m. UK time, and excuse me, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And of course, we change our clocks. We go off of daylight savings time on Saturday night. So last week, I know that the UK, USA schedules were overlapping a little bit. And this week, it'll be back to normal. Okay, so now we were able to add that kind of color gradation. And when that dries, we'll see where we are from there. And I'll be back in just a second to do some green leaves. Okay, well, now that I am looking at it, I think that we do need to, I'm sorry about the camera shake, everybody. I think we do need to bump up the contrast just a little bit in these flowers here. So let's do that. We'll just add a little bit of the golden yellow down in the deepest recesses. And because these flowers are looking a little washed out, and I don't want my washed out flowers. I don't like washed out flowers. So let's see if we can make them not quite as washed out. Yeah, that helps a little bit. What do you think? A little bit better? I think it's a little bit better. It's hard to tell with yellows. Sometimes if you're just going to use a straight yellow. I just took something out of the freezer for cooking tomorrow. I realized that I hadn't thawed anything out. So during that little hiatus that I took just now, it's like, uh-oh, the only thing I've got for dinner is a tuna fish sandwich, which is perfectly fine. For those of us who only cook either occasionally or who only have ourselves to feed, what do you usually eat? I usually end up with some kind of, it's got to be quick and easy. You know, I do cook. I try to cook at least once a week, make casseroles or soups or, some sort of a major deal, something good for you. A roast with all the accompanying vegetables and things like that. And then I, freeze part of it and basically I eat on it for probably about 4 days out of the week. And then the other 3 is, it's all about cereal or pancakes or, a quick omelet or, a grilled cheese sandwich, something along those lines for dinner. Peanut butter, tuna fish, whatever I happen to have. Ham sandwich. All perfectly acceptable substitutions for not having to cook. I do try and stay away from the frozen meals, although there are 2 that I cannot resist when the store actually has them. One of them is the mushroom chicken pot pie that Marie Callender's does. And the other one is also a Marie Callender's, and it is the chicken fried steak, which is, actually it's called country fried chicken, but it's actually a chicken breast, boneless, skinless chicken breast, with chicken fried steak batter. My favorite. Yum, yum. Comes with mashed potatoes and corn. But I don't have one of those in the freezer. Otherwise, I'd be having that. I might actually have to switch on the heat tonight. It's been cold all day. But so far I haven't had to turn it on. My house is fairly well insulated, so. Usually, back in Nevada, I lived in a big stone house. And what was odd about that house, it was terrible to heat and cool. You didn't really need to cool it ever, because it was stone, and the walls were, the underlayment was all cinder blocks, so it was this big, it was actually built out of cinder block and then faced with flagstone. So the whole house was stone, but the walls were the walls along the outside, the exterior of the house, were all double cinder blocks. So with the stone face and the double cinder block, they worked out to be about 3 feet thick. Because the river stone was on the inside walls as well. So it was on the outside and the inside. It's a beautiful house. Jeez, I miss that house. My ex still lives there. I check the tax records every now and again. He still lives there. Okay. All right, so that's a little bit better. And it ties in a little bit better. All right, so now let's figure out what greens. Oops, hang on. Don't want to flip pencils. Now, Eva used, let's see. Eva used probably our equivalents are going to be the spring green and the Ionian green, all the way up there at the top, or actually right there. But I don't want to go too dark with that, because I also want to work in a fern green. I don't want all the greens to be exactly the same. Like, see how up there on the tall flowers, the tall purple flowers, how she used a more blue-green. I like the blend of that, the blue greens and the yellow greens, I think. But maybe we'll try the spring green and the beach. And beach might not be dark enough. We'll try, we'll try we'll just, Christine, get out of your own way. Spring green, 1550. Ionian green, 1320. Get these out of the way. I love Derwent Inktense because they are all marked. That is the apple green. This is the spring green. Now, this is what is so weird because, look, see how, I don't know if you can see that. See how this is so much lighter than that? But up here, it's darker. And that always confuses me. So we're taking the spring green and the Ionian green. Now, I am at a point in time where I desperately need to sharpen my Ionian green. And so I think that I will do that, and I will hold the shavings in reserve. And the place that I will hold them, hang on just one second. The place that I will hold them is in a little half pan. I can figure out how to get into these half pans. And once again, I do this so as to not waste pigment. But I don't want to color with I don't want to color with the watered version yet. So this is what I do. I'll take it and I'll put it on a plate like this. And I'll get a nice bit of sharpen on it. And then I will pull the wood shaving and dump the balance of what's left into this little container. You almost want to lick your finger, but you don't dare, because if you do, you're going to end up with a green tongue. That'd be funny. Okay, so you get all of them in there, and then you can set that aside. Try not to flip it over or lose it. There is enough pigment in there to do an entire picture. Believe me. So we'll set that aside. And this is why Whoops. Oh, look. A chunk. Don't lose that. Don't lose those expensive chunks. Okay. So that's better. All right. So now let's color. Okay. Sorry, that was a rabbit trail. I am going to just put a smooth layer of the spring green down on the entire leaf. Just with a fairly light hand. I'll do a couple of them. So that we have a nice underlayment. Maybe I'll just do all three of these. Because I'm really going to end up doing all of these the same way. Okay. Now I'm going to take the Ionian green and start out by doing my veins fairly boldly. And then I will add a layer of the darker green and shade it very similarly to how you would do, if you were doing with pencils, but just your initial layer, where you're doing your color mapping. For those of you who are familiar with layering pencils. So where I used heavy pressure on the veins, I'm just using medium pressure here and just working my way out a little bit so that hopefully I'll end up with a nice blend. Because I want my leaves to be lighter on the outside. We'll see how that goes. Keeping in mind that this part would be a little bit darker since it's coming out from under this leaf and has this petal kind of hanging over it. So you're looking at a bit of shadow and shading there. I did watch an episode of the Crazy Lamp Lady today, pardon me, and she has found yet another new consignment shop. And she just about cleaned them out. They had some beautiful things, beautiful collectible things at good prices. And, the thing about that is, about thrifting for resale, is that everybody wins. I mean, the person who donated the items gets a tax write-off. The person who, the store that sells the items, they're usually, some sort of a not-for-profit charity type thing. So they get their money. And then, because she's got a very good eye, excuse me, for things that are aesthetically pleasing, and a big enough following to where she's able to get really good prices and give really good prices to the collectors at the other end. You know, the people that are actually looking to, because all of these things are still collectible. You know, it's just whoever had them either didn't realize that they were collectible or did not want to be the person to, you know, they were willing to pass on the responsibility of getting rid of it to the thrift shop. So it's a win-win as far as I'm concerned. But I love watching that show because she does have a really good eye for things that are beautiful. There is also another channel that I've been meaning to mention, and probably a lot of people already know about this one, but it's called The Painted South, and it is a young woman out of, I want to say she's out of Texas. But she does absolutely incredible boutique looks on a budget. You know, boutique decorator, like you hired a decorator and had the decorator create all of these or commission all of these unique pieces to do your home. And she shows you how to do it yourself. And for the most part, it's very simple. You know, you just have to be able to use a drill or a glue gun or something along those lines. I think this might require a little bit of tweaking, color tweaking later, but so far I'm not unhappy with the result of that leaf. I should not talk, I should actually pay attention to hear what I'm doing. Okay, and now, because this part is darker underneath that leaf, the veins are getting just a little washed out on this one. So I may have to come back in and put a little more color in there on that one. Excuse me. Okay. Sorry guys, I didn't mean to go quiet on you there. Just trying to concentrate. Make sure I don't completely mess this up. Okay. All right. So, I think that this one I'm not super happy with, but I did this one a little bit differently. And so I think I need to let that dry and maybe give that one a second try. Let me take a quick pause and I'll be right back. We'll let these dry and see how they do. Okay, well, while we're waiting for that to dry, let's, oops, yeah, just a second there, okay. let's do some of these. And make sure I've got the right green. That is the Ionian green. That is the spring green. Come back down here, turn the page just a tad, and we'll go for some of these. Once again, just putting a nice base layer of color on. And I was just thinking to myself that I have no idea what is even on network television anymore. You know, I've been watching so much YouTube, and there's so much reality TV on now that I just, just don't find appealing. I like the idea of Survivor, but I find that I can't watch it because people are mean to each other, and I can't. It just turns me off to watch people plot against each other, which is probably the same reason why I've never been able to watch shows like The Bachelorette or The Bachelor or anything like that, because people are just mean to one another. I just can't stand it. I'm in love. He's my love. No, he's not. He's my love. Oh, good Lord. That's why he always ends up single. Not one of those guys has ever gotten married. I think the only ones that ever have are Krista and Ryan from the very, very first one. After that, and it's so scripted. I mean, I just hate to ruin it for everybody, but it really is scripted. Uh-oh. My phone's making noise. Okay. I like that, and I think I do want to make those a slightly different color, but I don't know that for sure. But let's take the Ionian green and do a deeper green in the dark spaces where it would be shadowed by everything else. Can you tell when I've run out of things that are actually on my mind and start talking about network TV? Oh, don't get me started. Don't get me started on network TV. I miss when news programs were a half hour long and they reported the news. Now all you get is gossip and talking heads. Where's Walter Cronkite when you need him? Alrighty. go for that. I was watching a rather disturbing statistic that in 2000, well, whatever the metric was that they checked at 2018, 2017, the teen suicide rates are up by 56%. That is disturbing to me. And the culprit, in a lot of times, is bullying, and our kids are not, they're still not being taught how to deal with that. That's just very disturbing. Social media bullying. Does make you stop and think. But we do want to talk about happier things. Like coloring. So I love one of the characteristics that I love about Inktense. Hang on, let me see if I can get a better focus. It could just be me. Is the focus out? Oh, that might be better. Is that better? Right around there. Is that it just makes blending of colors so easy. They are one of my favorite tools to use. For just that reason. Plus, they really satisfy the inner painter in me. There's just something, I think it's why brush tips, when on markers are so satisfying to use for a lot of people, because they, it's like they satisfy an inner painter in you. I was watching Jennifer Stay working with the twine markers on the Everblends, the Arteza fine liners, all of that the other day, and they really do. There's just something about working with a brush. And then I'll work with my pencils for a while, and I'll fall back in love with my pencils. And a brush is the furthest thing from my mind, so. Okay. Alright, so that is looking fairly good. I'm liking it. Alright, now this is dry enough, I think. I did pull out a third green, which is this beach green. Now, in the spectrum of the greens, the beach is probably a mid-tone, because we've got the spring green, and we've got the Ionian green. And so the beach green falls right around in the middle. But I wanted to smooth out the greens here, but I didn't want to make them you know, I didn't want to lose the veining in the dark Ionian green. So I've chosen this mid-tone green to try and maybe even out some of that streakiness. And one thing about it is the color lays down a little bit differently once the page has been wet. It's almost like it lays down a little bit smoother. And so I thought that we would give this a try and see if it helps to even out those greens. What I'm trying to avoid is these harsh transition lines. I don't want it to look like it's just light green with dark green inside. And see, to a certain extent, some of these leaves up here do look like that. Especially the ones under the small round pink flowers over here on the side. I don't want mine to look quite as two-toned as that. I want them to be more of an even blend. That's not a criticism. It's just it's just how I would like mine to look. So, we'll try it on these big leaves, and if it works, then we'll know that we can do it on the others as well. And I'm also going to approach this much more like this. I'm going to blend the edges of these two, just picking up a little bit of that green, and then go in and blend the centers and see if that helps at all. One of the things that I know a lot of folks worry about when they use a water brush on Amazon paper, which is what all my books are printed on, they worry that they'll pill the paper. But a water brush is really light, and as long as you are not scrubbing with it, you know, in other words, you're not down there just scrubbing in one spot, you'll never hurt the paper. And it won't pill on you. And then the other trick, of course, is to always let it dry before adding other layers. But I've saturated Amazon paper over and over and over again using Inktense and never had a problem with it. So just working my way in to the darker areas, and then you do have to sort of brush off a little bit of the excess pigments. And I think that, see, it's already showing a much nicer smoothness of blend. Just by blending the edges where you got that darker shade out. And if you're not happy with something, wait for it to dry, and then look for the best way to, to try and achieve the look that you want. The worst thing that you can do is try and fix it while it's wet, because then you kind of will ruin it. By causing just the kind of disaster that you don't want, like peeling paper. Okay, and one more. Okay, so just like that. Ta-da! I am really liking the way that tiger lily looks. I have to admit that darkening up those two ends really made it pop. Let's go back to our rose madder. Or not rose madder. Our madder brown. Rose madder. That was a good book. I really enjoyed that book, Stephen King. And I also just want to add a little bit in the center of those to sort of give them a little pop. Pull it down. Just leave a little tiny white area, like a little round highlight. Maybe not. Maybe we'll fix that with a, there we go. That's better. They look better solid. Okay. I'll rinse off that brush since that was a dark shade. I always have a little jar of water on my desk to wash off my brushes. Otherwise you end up squeezing all the water out of your water brush just to clean it. And you don't really want, I don't like to do that. Okay. Okay, well, how am I doing so far? I think I'm paying pretty good homage to Eva's coloring. And so we do need to continue working on green leaves, which is quite likely to be repetitive to watch, but I will nonetheless do at least a couple of more, and we'll go from there. Just now I want to see that we've perfected that method. I've lost one of my greens. There we go. It's because it looks like a yellow to me. I do, because I'm going to do these the same way that I did those. So let's do the little ones, because I'm going to do these the same way I'm going to do these. And so let's just start a little one up here. And lower the camera. And get us some kind of focus there. So this is the spring green. Have to remember where I put all the little leaves or follow where I put all the little leaves. Okay, so there's the spring green. And then I think that I will use the Ionian again. That's this one. Okay, and just to the very base of the leaf. Because remember that this pigment will spread upward. It won't necessarily bleed. You have to brush it up a little bit, but you'll get a chance to see that. And then I always start at the top where I want it to be the lightest. And then go down into the darker. And then I brush it back to exactly where I want it. And let the, let the darker pigment sort of bleed up into the lighter in a more natural way. Kind of pushing it up there, letting it bleed, and then sort of brushing it back. And that'll result in the ends of your leaves being just a little bit lighter. And creating a really nice blend with your Inktense. Okay, and one more of those. I remember learning how to do this from Katrine at Always Coloring, who was just a queen of Inktense. She loved them so much. All right, so I will continue on. I will do these leaves also very similar so that they're just a tiny bit lighter on the outside. So I'll continue to do leaves, and we'll let them dry, come back, and we'll do a background, or do the base. I have some ideas about how to do the base. See ya in a little bit. Well, hello everybody, and welcome back. And so today is a new day. It is, not only did I just finish this a little bit ago, but it is actually Saturday evening. So this is how far I have gotten. And as you can see, I did all the leaves green in varying stages. They pretty much all look the same. Let me get rid of, get a screen that's got, actually let me move the book over. There we go. They are all, primarily the same color, which really does keep the color cohesiveness. And I really did just make them lighter on the outside, darker on the inside, kept that simple. Because the next part of it, of course, is sort of the make or break of, at least for me, can I do what Eva did? which is essentially put these in a white vase. White is a notoriously hard color to cover, or hard color to color. A white bowl, a white vase, is notoriously difficult for me because it's all about grays. What is white is rarely white, it's actually gray, and varying shades. So let's see what we can do on making this vase. I've had a couple of ideas of ways to handle it, and here is one of the first ones. We're going to see if this works at all. If I were to take this gray and put it directly on the paper, I think what I would get is streaking, and that isn't the effect that I want. What I want is for it to look like dots. So let's blow this up so that we can see. Let me see if I can actually blow it up even more so we can take a really good look at what she did. And see how it's more just taps of like a brush or something along those lines? That is what I wanted to do to try and get that effect. So with that in mind, reduce this baby back. Isn't that cool that I can actually do that on live on screen? Who knew that I could do it while we were while we were actually recording? Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I am going to take some color directly off the brush, or directly off the pencil. Now, what I have in my hand is the neutral gray. I had a lot of different choices, and originally I had the charcoal gray in my hand, but the charcoal gray is primarily a green gray, and I wanted this to be a truly neutral gray. So what I've done is I have taken some of the pigment off the pencil, and this probably helps if I slide a little white sheet of paper underneath it. Grab one. A piece of cardstock, that'll work. All right, so gray is, these have an awful lot of different colors in them. This almost has a purple in it as a base tone to the gray, but all I'm doing is I'm working some water from the brush into it to get a much more diluted effect. And then I'm going to tap the diluted onto the page. To try and get that effect. So some areas darker, some areas a little bit lighter. It won't look exactly the same. And I'm going to be going over it with the antique white. So if I don't get it exactly perfect, or if it's, when it dries it'll be too dark or something like that, you can tap it and tone it down quite a bit with the antique white. And that also will give it, I think, the more creamy marbly effect, because the antique white is not truly white. It's more of like a creamy white color. And so I think that over that neutral gray, it'll work just fine. Now the other option would have been the Payne's gray, but the Payne's gray has a primarily blue undertone. So neutral has a purple undertone. Payne's has a blue undertone. And charcoal has a green undertone. I'm not forgetting that there should be a little over there too, as it maybe curves around a area. And then even down here a little bit. At the bottom. Just like that. So we'll let that dry and see how that does. Move my paper back to where, once you take it out of the ream, it's so hard to put back. Okay. Rinse off my little brush with my little jar of water. I actually had to change the water out in this brush because if you're not careful, it will suck up the color that you're working on, and so it was green and it looked like swamp water. I'm sure you would not have enjoyed looking at it like swamp water. Okay, so while we're waiting for that to dry, let's add the yellow colors into the corners. And so I'm just very, very lightly kind of putting a little bit of the yellow in. You can almost barely see that, but and I'm also going to add a little tiny bit of the more golden yellow just in underneath the flower, right up there in the corner, to give it just a little more effect. Once again, this part here is just super, super subtle. But wow, see how dark the water gets? Or how dark the paper gets with water with these yellows. Either that or I didn't clean the brush out well enough. Gosh, I hope I did. Ooh, it doesn't look like it. It looks like I've got tons of gray in that brush. Why are you doing that? Well, I may have to go in there and fix that with some white. That'd be a heck of a thing, wouldn't it, if I messed it up at this point? All right, well, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be too happy with that, but we'll see. All right, I'm going to start now with the golden yellow, see if that makes a difference. Of course, now that the brush is clean, it probably will look better. That'll dry and I'll be able to get it out of there, though. Change it over. Now that I have an idea of how that color is going to lay down, I could be a little less subtle with it. Just sort of fade it out. So I hope that everybody had a good day today. The temperature has stayed down here in Virginia. It was cold last night. I walked to the 7-Eleven at at my usual time, which is around 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and it was cold. Whew. Makes you walk very briskly, that's for sure, which is good for the heart. That's why I do it. Okay. All right, so there'll be a little yellow coming out from under there. Yeah, this one's going to have to be fixed. That's too bad. Well, that's okay. That's okay. And beside which, I might want to even bring it out a little further. We'll see. Let's see if I can do it better here, since this one actually comes out a little further. So I'll whip the book around. And we will try this again. So last night, after I stopped working on this, or while I was letting the green leaves dry, I went over and watched the Thursday evening chat at Mrs. Coffee, and she is working on a one of the new Hannah Lynn diamond paintings that's available exclusively, apparently. Although I don't want to attest to that, but apparently the Diamond Art Club is the one that is doing a lot of the more well-known coloring book artists into art, or into diamond paintings. And actually, they're not really coloring book artists. They're artists, well-known artists who have allowed their work to be made into coloring books. They're actually painters. Professionally, they actually create art for sale, paintings for sale, such as Hannah Lynn and Elena Lazareva, and I don't know that they have any Jasmine Beckett-Griffiths, but I believe that some of hers have been made into diamond paintings. Additionally, I know that but that's not what I was going to talk about anyway. But the quality of the diamond paintings that are coming out of the Diamond Art Club, apparently it was formed primarily to address some of the quality control issues that they were having, because there's about a gajillion manufacturers of the things out there. So basically, I've heard good things about the ones that are available through Diamond Art Club. All of which, thankfully, the one that I bought from Benbow on Amazon have, which is the clear cover instead of the opaque, which apparently has something to do with the way that the glue that's used. So I'm learning all about diamond paintings is really where I'm going with that. And I worked on the one that I have a little bit until I flipped a tray of the little drills all over my desk and said, you know what? I think maybe it's time for me to go to bed. They're very lightweight and they go everywhere. And since it was the second time I had done it, that yesterday, that I dumped, actually flipped flipped off the, didn't really flip it. I just sort of put too much weight on one end of that little tiny light tray and went bing, and everything went all around me. Guess I should have looked to see if we were actually recording before just this second, but yeah, it does look like it is. Okay, so now I'm just going very, very lightly. All right, so that is a little more of that. Let's see how that works. I know that our Miss Ann over at A Colorful Life, excuse me, had a birthday yesterday, the 1st. And so happy birthday to Ann. I did send her a message. Okay. Can always tweak that, add a little bit more. Just trying to pull it up, you know, whatever pigment might be left over. Just pull it up into that area. Yeah, that's a good, that is good. We'll try this one. Whoops, that's the, see, this is what I mean about the green on the leaves. Whoops, I'm gonna roll it one more time so I can pull it down. The green on the leaves is dry, so it is permanent. And that's why I can't, you know, I can sort of get close to it and pull this pigment around it without pulling out little bits of the green. So that's what I love about Inktense, because it goes permanent on you. Less easy to mess up when you're putting a second layer on, which is not true of watercolor or gouache, because it will move, and so will acrylic paint, for the most part. Okay. Whoops. Okay. And once that's completely dry, we'll go in and fix that one as well. All right, so let's try adding in a layer of the white. Well, actually, I don't want to do that yet. I want to put in my grays first. I do want to put in my gray. Well, once again, I've got the neutral gray, and I do want to just sort of address some of the shadows. Of where it would be shadowed by these leaves. Like out there at the tip, underneath this one. I'm assuming that the light is coming, you know, from like there, up here. Ooh. Okay. So you wouldn't necessarily shadow both sides, only maybe one side. And that one, since it's going the other way, can have a little shadow right there. And then you can just a little bit down the edges. Okay. Whoops. Sorry, I'm down there. You can't see what I'm doing. All right, now for this, because this is supposed to be a silver band, so I'm just, with a nice even pressure and a very light touch, just sort of putting in a little bit of gray there. And I'll do the same thing on this side. Only going one direction. And I'm just touching the pencil to the paper because this is going to pick up very, very gray. And we can add more later. As a matter of fact, I will even add a little bit more right now. Okay. Okay, so that sort of gives you a starting point. And then even lighter than before, I'm just pulling in a little bit more color. It won't be as smooth as the pencil version, which Eva did. At least not initially, but you can, if you work it, you can get it there. This is a silver band, so I'm darkening up the edges just a tiny bit to make it look a little bit more three-dimensional, you know, so it stands off the vase just a little bit. Okay, now we can add the white right over everything else. Once again, a medium pressure, just barely lightly. You can hardly see it, but you know it's there. One of the beauties about working with white like this is you don't have to be too fussy about things like streaky lines or anything like that. Because all it really is just a way to smooth out the harsh whiteness of the page by adding a little bit of white to it. And it also helps to tone down the dots so that they look more like marbling, I think. And just to preserve my center there, I'll put a little bit in the center. So this is a big area to get wet all at once, but we're going to do it anyway. So I'm going to work the shadows first. See what I mean about that color really darkening up there in those shadows? I had all sorts of funny things planned to talk about, and you know what? I cannot remember a single one of them. Just this particular second. So I apologize, everyone, for sort of more concentrating on the actual coloring than the entertaining part. Okay. I do want to say thank you to everybody today who has been buying this particular drawing. That's wonderful. It is available as an individual page. It is also in my book. I believe that this one is in 40 fan favorites as well. So it is additionally, beside being in the standalone book, this one, Fabulous Flowers. It is also in 40 fan favorites, and it's available as a standalone drawing as a PDF in my Etsy shop. And of course, all the books are also available as PDFs. So, okay, I need to see if I can get that brush a little bit wetter. It's wanting to dry out on me. There we go. I don't know if y'all saw it, but did you see the bubbles go up in the, that's as it's sucking air. So it, the bubbles go up in the pen. And that's how I got the green in the water. And despite the fact that it looks like I'm saturating the page, you can see I'm really not. It is a very light application of water, dries fairly quickly, which is, again, one of the reasons why you can successfully color on the Amazon paper, which is 60-pound bright white paper. But paper doesn't start to get really luscious until you get up into about 90 pounds. So, okay. Oh, yeah, see, I love the way that that looks as it's starting to dry. Okay. So I am sort of saturating this edge just a little bit more, kind of hoping to work out a little bit of the harshness of that shadow line that I put in. It seems to work wet, but I don't know if it will work dry. And now, I'm going to work on the band just a bit. So I've got that part that's fairly dark. Then I'm working the edge. Now I am only brushing in one direction toward the center, but I'm working from light to dark. Now I expected to pick up just a little bit of gray with there, which I did, but once that's dry, that will disappear on you. All right, and now we can do the same thing. I'm pulling from the short end first to just pull a little bit of color in. I want to leave that center as light as possible. And of course, if you totally mess this up, you can just paint it with a silver Posca or a silver glitter pen, something along those lines. If you want it to be silver, you can make it any other color that you want. I just wanted to make it a little, try and make it a little bit metallic. Then I'm actually brushing off, because that's an awful lot of gray. And then I'm going to do this part down here. Where I put in that bottom shadow line. And that. Okay, so now while that is drying, let's jump out and see. The overall effect is pretty good. Hang on, let me go back to the one where I've got our corner picture. The overall effect is not bad. And I think that other than maybe adding, this is an area where I need work. I really do need to learn to do this better. Sort of the glowing color out from behind something else. I'm not very good at it. Self-admittedly, I'm not very good at it. So I'm just adding a little bit more of the darker yellow in here. I just never quite know how far to bring it, It's an effect, an artifact. But I always drew in black and white, and so I can do it in grays. I can definitely do it in gray, but I can't really do it very well in white. There we go. Okay. And it could be the Tuscan yellow. Maybe I just need to not use as much Tuscan and use more golden. Yeah, this is Sicilian. Sicily, Tuscany. It's all Italy. If you're Sicilian or Tuscan, please don't yell at me. I know they are vastly different regions, but you all have great food. So what is everybody's favorite kind of food? I think I've asked this before, but are you American foodies? Are you obviously for the folks that are not Americans? What is your favorite kind of food? And speaking of which, Americans, of course, we eat a lot of ethnic food. We love Indian food. We love Mexican food. We love Italian food. I was fortunate enough to live in D.C. for a while and had access to Ethiopian food and all sorts of these wonderful, wonderful restaurants. But what if you live in those countries? What is I can hardly imagine that there are any American food restaurants in your countries. I don't think you import American food as we like to export, say, Italian food. Or so, what are your favorite kinds of foods other than your own? If the people of Italy aren't going to eat Italian food, what do they eat? Do you go out and crave Indian food and get that, or for that matter, what? There aren't any English food restaurants anywhere either, or United Kingdom food restaurants here in America, and there's no Canadian food restaurants. So what gives with that? Just a funny thought that just occurred to me. So, is it because we are the nations of immigrants, and so that's probably why we import all of our food from the countries, the people that immigrated here. Okay. Hot diggity, I think that may have done it, at least on that. And we just have a couple of finishing touches to add. And let's see if I can figure out how to zoom out. Okay, so that's a little better, yeah? I don't think I even went far enough really with that, but now I have to wait for it to dry again. All right, so we just need to add some gray around the edges. I don't know, guys, I kind of like that vase. Did I do okay with that? It needs to be a little darker on the edges. It needs to be a little bit darker there on the edges. In the world is that? Oh, that's okay. The cat. The cat is in the hallway. All right, so the cat is in the hallway making a noise and it's trying to scare the heck out of me. like, what is that? So a campaign worker came by today, because we have here in America we have an election coming up here in a few days on Tuesday, and they were like, they held up the 67th campaign sticker or campaign placard thing that they had sent me through the mail, and he says, "Yeah, I did hear that we've been sending a few too many of those this year." Oh, I am liking this. It is looking beautiful. They just wanted to make sure that we were all planning on going out and voting. I don't know about you guys, but I never miss the vote. Because I always figure that if I miss the vote, I don't get a chance to complain. If I actually vote, then I can complain to my representatives. Okay. Zoom back down a little bit. Alright, so now all I'm just going to do is just add a little bit of this light gray, or, gray in there. And just sort of run it down, make it darker underneath the flower. And then just sort of pull it out a little bit. Not too far. Boy, that was a little light. Okay. There is such a thing as being way too subtle, and then you end up having to go back and do it again. So let's see how that goes. I did watch the follow-up of Curiosity Incorporated. Alex did go out and with Hans, and he did purchase him a home. Use the the money that was donated. The account is still open, the donation pool is still open. When I last looked, it was around $57,000, which was they were actually able to cut a deal on a real house for him, for Hans, instead of another trailer, and this will be his first house in years that wasn't a mobile home type thing, which in Canada is so hard because it just gets so cold there. It is just nearly impossible to, when you've got 40 degrees below zero for an extended period of time. No, it doesn't matter how hardy you are, that is not the kind of weather that human beings are meant to sustain themselves in, although, it does get cold in a lot of places, historically. I don't like the, I didn't like that harsh transition line. Yeah, see, I went too far with that one, because by the time I add this one in, there's only going to be a small space of white, but that's okay. Mine doesn't have to be just like hers. In fact, I kind of like, I love this one. I love this flower. I like it better than that one. Better than that one. That's pretty funny. And of course, if you are interested in watching part 1 of this, I will put a little information card link to the part 1 up there. And so I will continue on And I do believe that that this pretty much has demonstrated all of the techniques that I would use using Inktense to do a coloring along that line. Once again, full credit for the color palette has to go to Eva Nordmark and her beautiful coloring of the work that she did. This, by the way, was the runner-up for the cover of the book. Perhaps if I ever release a revised edition, I might end up being able to use it. Although I think that the issue came up with, if I'm going to use one on the cover, I have to have a 600 DPI good quality scan, and I don't think there was a way for Eva to get that to me, and that's, but I love the cover that I used on the book, so, I just wanted to mention that it was a runner-up for the cover. Thank you, everybody, for bearing with me and joining me on this particular journey. I will see you later today for the live, and if you're watching this back after the live stream, where we will be coloring my newest drawing, which I have put aside. Hang on. There it is. This is what we will be coloring today, or later today in the live stream, and I haven't yet decided what we're going to use for coloring medium. Probably Inktense, but who knows? It could be anything. And so I hope to see you there. Once again, please do like and subscribe to my channel and ring the bell for notifications. And if you'd like to, please follow me on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Also, you are welcome to join my Facebook group, which is CLAldridges Coloring in Bloom Coloring Club, and that is on Facebook. And please do like my artist page over there on Facebook at CLAldridge Art. And in the artist page, as well as the group, there is an album there that does have some free images for you to color, should you like. If you do that, please don't distribute them to anybody else, but color them and do post and tag me, and I will do my level best to try and find those tags so that I can comment and say, yay, thank you so very, very much. Until we meet again, please color something pretty. Bye, everybody. Thanks for stopping by.